What is going on, homies? I got a new camera. Tell me what you guys think. Drop it down in the comments box. We're gonna kind of up the ante on some of this content creation, make it suave, cool, but hashtag no pro, don't forget that. But we've been hating on a Texas rig a whole bunch, and I got a little tip video. We're gonna test out the camera, and I'm gonna show you something to do with your Texas rig to make it so much more dimensional. And I can't take credit. I always give credit where credit is due. My buddy Bass Quest, Caleb, he's over on Lake Chickamauga. He showed me this trick, and it's really a way to make your Texas rig perform in multiple different ways, get the most out of it, and also be more efficient on the water. Use it in ways that you need it, but you don't want to have 20 rods rigged up on deck. It's a super cool little trick. It's my Texas rig box. Got weights, hooks, bobber stoppers. That's what we're going to use today to do this little trick. Texas rig worm rod. So a Texas rig is already a super dimensional deal. Like, you can drag it, you can swim it, you can pop it off the bottom, you can pitch it to cover. It's really an all-purpose, super OG rig. You know, you can do so much with it. It's caught so many bass, and especially this time of year when the cover sets up as a great way for bass to kind of hide from the sun, get in the shade, create ambush points. The grass grows up, they get under the docks, they get in wood. It's a perfect tool to tap into those fish. My standard Texas rig, I usually run 15-pound fluorocarbon. This is just simple red label. It's a budget fluorocarbon. I'll put links to all this stuff down in the description box too, but I like it because of the price point. It's decent fluorocarbon. It isn't amazing, but it's decent and it works. I always want to run like a 7-2-1 or even an 8-speed reel. You want to run a faster reel because oftentimes, mostly, except when you're swimming it, you're dragging this thing, and when you get a bite, you want to reel up that slack line in order to set the hook because there's a bit of stretch in that fluorocarbon. So you need to make sure you're kind of taut with the fish before you actually sweep and set that hook. I got two different rods that I use for this deal. One is a 7-foot medium heavy, super standard, right? It's pretty much a do anything utility rod. And then I also have a 7.2 medium heavy. I like that one when I'm fishing, maybe like a little more like rocky, things that I really need that little bit softer tip or a little more play in the tip. Swimming a worm, when I'm doing that with a Texas rig, it has a little more tip to it, and it allows you to make a little bit longer cast. So if I'm on more of a broad flat or something along those lines, but a 7-foot medium heavy, if you're just getting started, it's super accurate. It's long enough so you have a nice like bend to the rod. It has a nice little tip to it. It's just a super utility rod. Flip it, pitch it, swim it, do just about whatever. I hate Carolina rigs, and if you guys watch the videos, you know that. So one thing I don't like to do is always have a Carolina rig tied up, and the reality is you probably should have a Carolina rig tied up because in summer these fish tend to get off the bottom, or you want to keep your bait off the bottom a little bit. It's a great tool. My buddy Miles Murray on Lake Gunnersville, it's actually, we drove down from Huntsville, that's where we're at right now. He's just religious about a Carolina rig, and I never have one tied up, and it really takes watching somebody catch like 10 fish for me to like jump on the old ball and chain. So what Caleb showed me is pretty cool, and it starts off like a standard Texas rig. You got bobber stoppers right there. Those are 6-cent bobber stoppers. All you're gonna do is take your line and put it through the bobber stopper. You're like, yeah, balls, you're not showing me anything new, are you? Stay with me. Trust me on this one. I was pretty blown away by this, and it's such a super simple like thing to do. So the bobber stoppers always make that nick in the line. We're gonna chop that off after we're done. So what you're gonna do then is take your weight. I got a little bullet weight, little tungsten weight right there, and I'm going to slide that thing on just like so. 5/16 is usually a magic number this time of year, almost for any depth unless you're dealing with current, so keep that in mind. 5/16 a little bit deeper, 3/16 a little bit shallower. So here's where things get interesting. So we got our weight, we got our bobber stopper that stops the weight from sliding, and normally you'd put a hook on, right? That's pretty standard. Here's what you actually do. So you're gonna take your bobber stoppers again, and you're actually gonna put a second bobber stopper on there. And I'm gonna show you why in just a second. So second bobber stopper is on, and it goes right behind the weight, just like that. So you basically have two different bobber stoppers right on there like that. And now I'm gonna clip that tag in because it has a little bit of a nick in it. Boom. And I'm gonna put my hook on. I run these Owner, they're worm hooks. Owner doesn't get enough love for making like super great hooks. I have literally no affiliation with them whatsoever, and they make an awesome hook. Flipping hooks maybe not so much, but like standard worm hooks and just hooks across the board, it makes some killer stuff, and it's decent price point. So we're gonna give her a lick, and boom. You'll notice I have an O'Shaughnessy hook on, like a standard offset. when I'm doing this worm fishing, with the exception around really, really thick vegetation like pads, canes, stuff like that, I'm always running that straighter hook. It's easier to set the hook, you miss less fish. Or if it's a super wide plastic. I mean, we were throwing a big old stick bait, so it's pretty skinny. So what's really cool about this is the following. So here's your standard Texas rig, right? Just weight, hook dangles down, super standard. You put a worm on there and drag it around. Wonderful. But when it comes to, I don't know, maybe you want to get the bait off the bottom. Maybe there's a little bit of goo on the bottom. You really want to throw a Carolina rig. Let's just put it that way. So you don't want to tie one up. You're like, I'm lazy. Like me, dude. I've got all these rods out, and the last thing I want is another rod. So what this actually does is it allows you to slide that weight up just like that, and then slide that second bobber stopper just like that, thus creating, let me slide it down so you guys can see. Usually you do a longer leader than this, but you can adjust it however you want, creating like a 2-second Carolina rig, dude. So you can have your weight up above the hook any distance that you want, and have that bait kind of suspended on the back, free floating, free moving, free floating if you want to use like elastic plastics. But basically it gives you a lot of different options when it comes down to Texas rigging, because you always have that Texas rig on deck. I mean, you're not really a bass fisherman unless you got a Texas rig, right? Couple quick notes. One thing is your weight is going to slide. If you make those bomb casts, or if you use a heavier weight, probably like 3/8, it's more, I'd say 1/2 ounce usually is when it happens. A 1/2 ounce and up, that's when you're gonna see that weight actually slide when you make the cast. The heft of the weight actually pushes the bobber stoppers and causes it to slide just like that. But I thought it was a super cool tip. Credit to Caleb. Go check him out. Bass Quest. Dude is an absolute hammer on Chickamauga. But it's a very easy way to do something that you're already doing and get 2 different rigs out of it. So you got your Texas rig, boom, super standard, put a worm on it, put a little crawl on it or something, drag it around, flip it, whatever you want to do. Or slide it up using that bobber stopper right there, and you got yourself a Carolina rig, the old ball and chain. Absolutely hate the ball and chain, but it catches them, especially this time of year. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know what you think of the new camera. Hit that like and subscribe button. Go visit Caleb. He's got a bunch of cool tips on his channel. Tight lines. We'll see you back out on the water.